Hello, my name is Jared Ludlow, Publications Director at the BYU Religious Study Center, your weekly resource for gospel scholarship. Today I'm joined by Ivy Lubeck, one of our editing interns, and we'll be discussing some possible resources that can accompany your Come Follow Me reading for May 13th through 19th, Mosiah 11 through 17. The first one is called Abinadi on the Father and the Son, Interpretation and Application. It's by Jared Parker, an independent scholar, and comes from a Sperry Symposium presentation. And here's a few points that he makes. Although most Book of Mormon passages are easy to understand, some are more difficult, such as Abinadi's teachings about the Father and the Son in Mosiah chapter 15, verses 2 through 5. Yet Mormon's inclusion of these words in his abridgment suggests that the Lord wants us to have these teachings and wants us to understand them. Another point he makes is that immediately after quoting Isaiah 53, Abinadi declares again that God himself shall come down among the children of men, evidently to ensure his audience understands that Jehovah himself will come down as the Messiah. In fact, it appears that Abinadi specifically taught about the Father and the Son after quoting Isaiah 53 to explain how Jehovah and the Messiah are actually the same person. And thirdly, he points out that a common theme for all of these senses in which Jesus is the Father, and he had listed out some various ways, is that they are directly tied to his status as God. It is because Jesus is God that he is the Father of heaven and earth. It is because Jesus was God while in the flesh that he was able to perform the atonement and become the Father of those who are spiritually reborn. And it is because Jesus is God that he is the Father representing Elohim by divine investiture of authority. So Ivy, what stood out to you from this article?
I really liked this article, and it's something that I personally have been a little bit confused about in the past, just the different titles for Christ, and when they call him the Father, I've been a bit confused. And I remember a conversation with my dad on the way to seminary one time where we talked about this, and that definitely helped clarify, but this even more so. It clarifies that Christ is both Jehovah and Christ, Jehovah being the Father in some ways and Christ being the Son, and that Elohim is distinctly different, but that Christ can take on some of Elohim's responsibilities.
Great, excellent. Yeah, it can be a confusing passage because we often talk about the Father and the Son in different ways, and yet he points out how Jesus can be or can carry that title, Father. So here's part of his conclusion. It appears that Abinadi's purpose for explaining how Jesus is both the Father and the Son was to show that Jehovah and Christ are the same person. Application of this doctrine can help us understand potentially confusing scriptures, such as those that represent Jehovah and the Messiah as two different persons. In addition, we can discover insights into other scriptures that speak of Jesus' dual roles as the Father and the Son. And he does, I think, do a good job of looking at other passages that can also have that confusion.
Yeah. He has a chart with comparing several scriptures that I thought was really helpful.
Yeah, good. Now the second article is called Benjamin and Noah, the Principle of Dominion. It's by Lee Donaldson, a church education system administrator, and it comes from a volume the RSC published called The Book of Mormon, Mosiah, Salvation Only Through Christ. And here's a few points he makes. In the waning moments of his life, King Mosiah II gathered his people together to propose a change in the structure of their government. He warned them of the risks of unrighteous dominion in a monarchy and illustrated his point by summoning up two of the most prominent examples of kingship from Nephite political history, King Benjamin and King Noah. So he'll compare those throughout. In some of the comparisons he points out, King Benjamin's purpose was to bring his people to Christ, while Noah led his people away from Christ. The great joy of Benjamin's people came from the teachings of their righteous king, whereas the sore afflictions of Noah's reign were the fruits of his evil leadership. So the book of Mosiah contrasts the characters of Benjamin and Noah on at least 7 points. And he then will go and explain these. Their treatment of and attitude towards temples, their handling of conflicts with the Lamanites, their methods of succession, their use of and reaction to sermons, and their attitudes toward physical labor and service, the written word, and the living prophets. These contrasts give life to our understanding of the principle of dominion. So, Ivy, what did you learn from this article?
I thought this article was so fun. I love King Benjamin, and I loved learning more about him and seeing him contrasted with King Noah, and I especially liked the comparison of the temples. How for King Benjamin's people, the temple was a symbol of humility and sacrifice, that they were sacrificing animals and coming before the Lord, wanting to learn and just draw close to him. But for King Noah, it was a symbol of his pride and his wealth and how he had taken from people to build his opulent temple.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, King Benjamin made a point of how he didn't want to take from the people. He served alongside them, and it's a great example in that way. As part of his conclusion, he says, for the ancients, character and personality were best seen in a person's deeds. Mormon followed this ancient philosophy in portraying the deeds of the two Nephite kings, Benjamin and Noah. But the deaths of the two monarchs also characterized their lives. Benjamin peacefully passed the kingdom to his son, retired from the kingship, and spent the last 3 years of mortality in peace. His obedience secured him a place in God's kingdom. On the other hand, Noah, who spent his life on the lusts and desires of the flesh, pronounced a death sentence on the one messenger who could have saved him from destruction. His cruel treatment of Abinadi became his own death sentence, though his desire for power and dominion consumed his soul long before the physical flames ever touched his body. Now, the third resource is a video of a roundtable scripture discussion discussing Abinadi's sermon, or Mosiah 11 through 16. And this included colleagues from ancient scripture, including myself, Nick Frederick, Jan Martin, and Joshua Sears. So I'd encourage you to watch this video clip and learn more about Abinadi's sermon.